Welcome to week 2 of the Art of Self-Care, Tools for Thriving. Marla and I are here again, and this week we are going to talk to you about breathing and why we believe that breathing is the key, and why we're going to passionately talk about the breath as we move through these different podcast episodes.
Yes.
So tell us more, Marla.
Well, I'm excited to share my passion for breathing because in working with clients over the last 22 years, I really noticed that any work that we do or any headway we make in yoga, meditation, exercise can so quickly be undone by the action that we do 24/7, which is breathing. So if there is a stress pattern in your breathing, you can have the best massage in the world to release all the tension in your neck and shoulders. And within an hour or less of leaving your massage, if you go back to your tense breathing, you've just undone everything that your massage did. And we can be undoing that work in our sleep. If our breathing is still tense and strained during our sleep, and these things become a pattern, they become a habit, and we do it unconsciously. So approaching the breath during our conscious time, so working on it a little bit to gradually unravel those tension patterns. It's been a pursuit of mine, I would say, for about 20 years, because I found my yoga breathing didn't always do that for me. My yoga breathing could end up being a bit like a massage, that it felt great at the time. But then if I leave my yoga mat and go right back to my unconscious pattern, tense breathing, I think, well, I thought that was supposed to affect my nervous system.
Did you find, just because you've taught, I mean, I have a yoga teaching background as well, but that wasn't my primary focus. It was more personal training. But did you find with your yoga, when you teach it and even when you do it, there's an awareness on the mat, but like I found myself even as a teacher, you get really calm and zenned out, but there's not that awareness of breath that we taught students to take into their everyday life. I mean, I feel like that was the missing link. Kind of like I feel like for movement, it's like, I feel like for movement, we need to address some of those things that we should be doing in everyday life, like posture and alignment. So that way, what we're teaching our bodies to do within our exercise programs are helping us in everyday life. And that's what I see with this breathing. I mean, I say this breathing, we're coming from the Buteyko method here, everybody. That's where our training is in, what our training is in, and the practices that we're offering within these podcasts and our work.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. And I think I did bring it into my teaching at many different points, but it comes to the mindset of, I used to teach in a really beautiful yoga center. So there was like cushions everywhere, little Buddha statues everywhere, candles. We would do yoga for 2 hours. At that time, every class was 2 hours long. And after the class, we had sat in this beautiful little cushioned carpeted area when we had tea and cookies for about half an hour. So it was, and our Shavasana was 20 minutes with blankets and just gorgeous music. So it really was like a little retreat in those 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours. So it was very idyllic. And so how do you translate that into your day-to-day life? You get into your car, you go back to work, you go to your family, you go wherever. So we did discuss those things, but I think a big piece was actually, as you said, we both have been studying Buteyko for the last year or more. And I have this background in studying the yoga breathing as it was taught to me. And I think there were some underlying misconceptions about what was I actually working on.
Yeah.
So it's about 2 or 3 chunks here in terms of, okay, you can feel good while you do that breathing, but what happens in your normal life? And then there's also, if you are actually looking at your breathing in your normal life, what are you noticing and what are you actually doing to shift that unconscious breathing pattern? So that's, I feel like, what I've been in pursuit of for 20 years or so. And it wasn't until I really discovered Buteyko that I found something that I feel genuinely shifts the unconscious breathing pattern.
Definitely. I feel the same way. And part of that is making the breath more conscious, more aware of the breath throughout the day. For me, thinking that breathing is a movement. And so if I teach movement anyway, breathing is, as the more I'm learning about it, is that foundational movement, because without that, we've got nothing on top of that. And so I feel that there's now this like need to teach, how are you supposed to breathe correctly? And I know you've had this experience as well, because we both speak about it, but people will say to us, well, I know how to breathe. Well, I know, and obviously you're still living, but
Yeah.
what is the quality of your breath? Just like movement. Okay, you walk, but you walk with a limp. What is that going to do to your body down the road? What kind of pains and injuries can that create? And that's what we're both seeing, is that as we develop this imbalanced movement pattern, or dysfunctional breathing pattern, as it's called in the breathing world, there's a whole cascade of effect that happens after that, not just from the physical level, like you talked about, that tension and the neck and the shoulders and everything, but what also happens when we breathe with a stress breath in terms of our hormones, our biochemistry.
Exactly.
There's that whole cascade of stress hormones that will come because we changed our breathing pattern. Because our brain is like, oh, that's stress breathing, better send out the stress hormones.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've really found important with my clients, of like, if your breathing is disrupted, it's not ideal, and you're doing that on average, say 17,000 times a day, what is that cascade of stress hormones that's happening all day? You're just getting showered with stress hormones all day. And meanwhile, your stress is already so high. So
Yeah.
part of the self-care piece is, how can we learn to create an awareness of breath? How can we breathe more efficiently and more effectively to bring down, just that, take off a blanket of stress, is the way that I see it.
Well, absolutely. And so I've had a lot of clients say to me, well, I breathe, it's going fine. We've heard that so many times. The thing is, we have to recognize that the primary breathing muscle is your diaphragm. It's that big mushroom shaped muscle right in the middle, attaching to the bottom ribs. If the diaphragm is not moving, your organs are not getting a squeeze and a pump and a stretch. So I often try to explain to my clients that the diaphragm is really the main pump of the body. So in how do we get people interested in breath as a key to improving their health? Because naturally they're not going to connect. I mean, a little bit closer is maybe neck and shoulder tension. You could connect that to your breath because at least it's in this area. But what about heart conditions or heart problems? I mean, we're not doctors. We're not, I'm not qualified to talk about specific heart issues or anything like that. But I have looked at a lot of studies that connect proper diaphragmatic breath with heart health. There's been
Well,
tons.
were you not amazed when you saw how the fascia of the heart, or the diaphragm, is like, the heart is embedded in that? When I saw that, I was like, oh my God. So if somebody's not breathing, this muscle isn't moving, their heart is just stuck.
Yes.
So are their organs. So, that gets our brains thinking like digestive issues and heart issues. So if we can just get that diaphragm moving again, we know it's going to improve the health of organs above and below.
Absolutely.
And it's free. Once you learn how to do it correctly, it's free. And I think it's important to note too, that it's not coming from a yogic perspective. I mean, it has its roots way deep in that, in a sense that we're talking about how we are designed to breathe. It's not a specific yoga practice. We're not going to call it belly breathing. It's not a 3-part breath. It's this awareness of breath throughout the day. But we'll talk about specific practices to work on improving that as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. So the heart and the diaphragm, I think, are in partnership. And if you think of those as being the pumps to the organs for the whole body, you really can see that your breath is that thread, and everything else are just kind of pearls or beads on that thread. Without that thread, everything's just falling apart.
Yeah.
So Stacy and I are going to be teaching some workshops. I think that's what she's kind of alluding to, things that we're going to be sharing, that we're going to be talking about. And I think we are excited to have this space to help people understand and get interested and get curious about Andrew Weil. If you're familiar with Dr. Andrew Weil, the American doctor, he has a CD that he did, a double CD set years ago, called Breath as the Master Key to Self-Healing. And it's a 2-part CD, some lectures and some practices. And it's really amazing. And it's very much in line with the way that you and I teach. It's how do you get people interested in something that's right under their nose,
Literally.
Literally right under their nose. Yeah. How do you get them interested in the fact that their ability to work and heal themselves, work with their own breath, their own body, is right there for them and available, and we just have to teach you how to do it. Many people think, well, I just need to take a pill. I just need to take my blood pressure medication for the rest of my life to bring down my blood pressure. Well, let's be curious. What would happen if you learned proper diaphragmatic breathing? And then check in with your doctor. As I said, we're not doctors, so it's not our place to tell you when to take or not take your medications. But rather than, have that conversation with your doctor and say, well, is that something I'm going to have to take for the rest of my life? And usually, yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me get curious about some other options. Your doctor is not really trained in these things usually. But if you could ask your doctor, do I have a little bit of time to try out a few things like breath and meditation or a combination of the two? And chances are you might have a chance to give that a try.
So all very good points. And so I'm wondering, you've talked about the diaphragm, but what are maybe two other things you could mention to everybody, or one, and I can give another, of some specific things within this practice that we are going to offer? So I'll say what I'm thinking, and then you can add maybe one more just to keep it simple. But we talked about the using of the diaphragm. The other thing that I think is very important to mention is the breathing through the nostrils. And so just to kind of give some people things to walk away with, start noticing throughout your day. How are you breathing? Is it through your nose? Is it through your mouth? Are you utilizing your chest, neck, shoulders? Because when we're breathing correctly, and this is 99% of the time, say we're not in that fight or flight stress response, our breath is through the nose with the diaphragm, and our chest, neck, shoulders are passive. So if you're breathing 17,000 times a day, and every time you do that movement pattern correctly and use these muscles, do you see that if you shrugged your shoulders 17,000 times a day, how are your shoulders going to feel? Right? So that's a way to check in. If you're carrying chronic tension up there, might be that the breathing's a little off. So begin to notice that throughout the day, because next time when we meet, next week, we're going to offer a short little breathing practice to go deeper into that. So do you have anything you want to, I think diaphragm, nostril breathing, what else is like a good awareness point or something that comes to mind for you?
Yes, absolutely. And just to put a cap on what you just said, I love in the Buteyko world, they say you should breathe through your mouth about as often as you eat through your nose.
That's awesome.
Keep in mind, the nose is really the instrument of breath. And so whenever, absolutely catch yourself if you start mouth breathing and start to change that, as I just did. It's really tough when you're talking to not mouth breathe.
It's so challenging. And I know that's one of my biggest practices for awareness now, especially because I'm talking so much, is how do you, one of our teachers said, breathe like the queen, or speak like the queen. So it's like talk, 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 close your mouth, inhale through your nose, and speak. So that provides a very good point. So anybody that talks a lot, is a singer or anything like that, because of that, there's chances are probably pretty high that there's a breathing dysfunction in there, because we're not going to go into detail today. We'll save that for another day, but those are some indications.
Yeah, and so that's a great point, Stacey. Start to notice, are you breathing through your nose or through your mouth? Another thing to start to pay attention to would be your physical posture. And so this is one of the ways that the breathing is so closely linked to the physical work, the movement coaching that you and I do. So we end up working a lot with the spine. Do you sit at a computer all day? Do you kind of slump back into your chair, into this flexion, rounded spine where your lungs are getting squeezed? And then if I take that, so now I'm hunched here, and then if I'm going to look at the computer, I'm going to kind of push my head forward a little bit. So now your whole breathing mechanism is like off kilter, out of line. Your neck muscles are totally tense. So just start to notice, do I have a nice clear pathway from my nose to my lungs? What is my body at relatively low tension and nicely stacked? And in our work, we call it the gravity line. So that central axis line through your head, through your ribs, through your pelvis. Or am I slumped? And the opposite of that would be, am I perched forward, like thrusting my chest forward and squeezing all my back muscles? Or can I play with that place where everything's balanced and I can kind of jiggle here?
And that's, kind of ties into what we talked about last week in terms of, with all of the self-care and tools for thriving, we have to have this awareness. That is the key. So what I propose to you all between now and next week, when we introduce this breathing practice, is be aware of your breath and how you're bringing your breath in during the day. If you deal with snoring, sleep apnea, some of those different things at night, chances are there's some breathing dysfunction. we'll talk about that later. And I think that provides a good opportunity to tell them about our workshop. We have a couple workshops coming up. They're the same workshop. We're just presenting them at different times because we're on different coasts. So on Tuesday, July 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're going to do our Breathing 101 workshop. And what did we say for that? The key to unlocking your vitality. So we're just going to talk about how you should be breathing, why, and some simple practices to help you improve that awareness and start unlocking your vitality. We're going to offer the same workshop that Saturday, July 25th. That's going to be at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and noon Eastern Standard Time.
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Sorry, 9 a.m. on Saturday. No 9 p.m. stuff on Saturday. But those are going to be 90-minute workshops. Next week, we'll provide some information, and in the link below, we'll provide some information on how to sign up for those classes and to get more information.
Yeah, and you can always go to my workshop, my website. Sorry, my workshop. You can always go to my workshop. You can go to Stacey's website or my website.
Yes.
marlawall.com. There'll be more information there. And your website,
Mine
Stacey?
is stonebodyworks.com. And I think we should also mention, because we both do breathing like classes that we offer weekly, I offer a Zen hour on Thursdays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a 60-minute class, and we just begin with a little bit of movement to open up the ribs and all those areas that get tight and get restricted when we've got movement pattern imbalances or breath imbalances. So we do a short practice, and then we go into a breathing practice. So I've got that, and you've got one on Fridays, correct?
I do. On Fridays at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I have a class called Breath Oasis, and it's a 45-minute class where very, very similar. We do some gentle stretches, some movements to help release some of those tense muscles and getting better access to our lungs and gain better access to the diaphragm. And then we move into some breathing practices. And it's an online class, so I really encourage people to just kind of put their headphones on, get comfortable. You can close your eyes. You can just follow my voice. You don't even have to stare into the computer.
Yep, I say the same thing. So I think you guys are starting to see Marla and I are kind of on the same page in a lot of ways, and we're kind of passionate about what we do. And together we feel like we're pretty awesome and presenting this information in a way that's like these just honest conversations, I think. And so if you guys have any questions, any thoughts, any feedback, please feel free to comment below. You can reach out to both of us. You can connect with us through our site. But we'll be looking at the feedback here so that we can address questions in the following week. So next week, we will introduce a simple breathing practice. We'll probably talk a little bit more about some things we got into this week and maybe a little more specifics about what we're going to offer in our workshop. So I don't know if you have anything more to add to that, Marla?
Not at all. I just want to encourage you, if you've never taken a look at your breathing before, I really want to encourage you to sign up for our workshop. It's going to be a really great foundational place to start.
And I think to seal it all together, Marla and I together have over 40 years of experience of teaching movement. This is not even talking about the movement that we had in our individual lives before this. And having taught movement for so long, and for us both within, say, the last 3 years since we've gotten into Buteyko, to become so infused and passionated, if that's even a word, about this, I think is a testament to how powerful this is as a healing modality. So we don't teach things that we're not passionate about. We don't teach things that aren't helping you guys to get better. So again, it's just one of those very simple tools that when you learn it, it's free. So I encourage you, check more of this out, check out our workshop, and just begin to be more curious, because 17,000 breaths a day on average, how are you doing that? Is it efficient? Is it effective? Because if it's not, it's going to have a negative effect on the entire body. So we'll talk more about that as we move forward and infuse the breath into our practices for self-care.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Stacey.
Yes. Thank you, Marla. I look forward to seeing you next time. And we look forward to seeing you all on The Price is Right. No, I'm just kidding. On these podcasts, Thriving for Self-Care, or the art of self-care and tools for thriving. So until next time, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.